Hi fantasy managers, welcome to FPL Team Talk. Less than 2 weeks to go until the start of the Premier League season. We've got less than 2 weeks to sort our FPL sides out. In this video, I'm going to go through my game week 1 draft. It does change from week to week. The time we get more news about players, transfers, team selections, friendlies going on. I'm going to go through why I've picked the players I have. And at the end, stick around because I'm going to go through some options. There's some other players I'm definitely considering bringing into my side. So if you enjoy your FPL content, make sure you click that like, hit subscribe, and let's take a look. In goal then, we've gone for Edouard Mendy. He's got some really nice fixtures at the start of the season. Everton, Leeds and Southampton, green fixtures in the first 5 games. Then 2 home games against Tottenham and Leicester. I really like him. 5 million, he seems like a real gift. Expected goals conceded last year, under 1. He got 130 points. But do remember, he spent some time at the AFCON as well. Comparing him to the other goalkeepers then, similar lines to Alisson, much better than Lloris. Ederson topped the charts. But you know what? I was a little bit worried about the defence earlier on in this pre-season, but they seem to have really bolstered that up with the arrival of Koulibaly. They should have Chilwell, James both fit, and also rumours about signing Koundé. I think he looks a good option. For 5 million, I'm prepared to overlook the budget goalkeepers and spend an extra 0.5 and go for quality, and I think Mendy gives me that. So I'm really happy to go for Mendy at 5. Other than my very first draft, he's been in there since, and I'm not really looking to change him anytime soon. In defence then, we're going to start off with someone that I'm just going to put in my side, and he's just been there right from the start. I'm not changing him. It's just Reece James, 0.9. As we know, look at goals conceded. His expected goal involvement per night is 0.46, 141 points, and remember, he missed a lot of games through injury last season. But how does that ranking compare to the other players? Trent obviously had a full season ahead of him last year, 0.47. He tops the bill. But then other than that, Robertson 0.3, Cancelo 0.29. We know how good and effective those players were going forward. Reece James tops them all. Yes, you could argue that's over a smaller sample size, but I've got faith. I think James at 6 million is a real gift. I can absolutely understand going for Chilwell or James. I just think I prefer James. I think he's slightly more nailed on without the pressure of Alonso. He's been off and back in the side a little bit longer than Chilwell, who had obviously missing most of last season. So I have a little bit more faith in his injury record there, I guess. James is for 1 for me. And for me, I'm just going to absolutely stick a lane on him. He's not changing. He's one of my unnegotiables. He's in my side, and that's the end of that. Set and forget, whatever you want to call it, Reece James. Alongside him then, Zinchenko, not a player I've been looking at too wildly, interested in maybe 10 days ago, but since his move to Arsenal from Manchester City, listed as a defender at 5 million, and those fixtures, playing in midfield for Arsenal, I think he's just an absolute must-have. I'll be shocked if anyone goes into that first game without him. Just the fact that he's playing in Arsenal midfield and he's down as a defender is enough for me at 5 million. He's just a real gift. At 5 million, he absolutely has to be in. Palace away. We know what happened there last year against Palace. Maybe we'll go unstuck again. Leicester at home, and they've got Bournemouth, Fulham and Villa. Decent set of fixtures. His XGI does not rate up alongside the likes of James, alongside Trent. Robertson are slightly ahead of him, a little bit below Cancelo. Remembering again, though, of course, he didn't play as many games last year for Man City as perhaps the others did. But you know what? For 5 million, I just think he's an absolute must-have. For me, Zinchenko comes in, saves me money, and he's nailed as well. I'm not even considering moving him elsewhere. Next on my list is Robertson. I could easily go for Trent. For 0.5, at the moment, I'm penciling Robertson in. I think he proved to me at the end of last season that there's perhaps just enough in him, or not enough difference between Trent and Robertson, for me to justify an extra 0.5. You could definitely argue that over the long term. Maybe I'll change my mind and go for Trent. But right now, Robertson gets the nod for me. 0.9, decent expected goals conceded. We know he's just behind Trent in terms of expected goal involvement. 0.3, decent, 186 minutes. He did miss more games last year. Perhaps there's more pressure on him to play ahead of Simicast. Perhaps he's got more competition for his place. but I still think he's pretty much nailed on in that left-back area. Fulham, Palace, Bournemouth at home, Newcastle, some really good fixtures there. I definitely want a Liverpool player. At the moment, he goes for Robertson, but I'm not putting a nail on him because I'm open. I can definitely consider Trent coming in later on. Alongside them, and yeah, I am going big at the back, I've got Perisic. His figures and statistics in Serie A, granted, were really impressive. 5.5, he's a little bit more expensive than the other Tottenham fullbacks, and I think I'm going to have a conversation about that later on when I look at the options. Fixtures look really good. Southampton at home's a nice way to kick off. Wolves and Southampton, both at home in those first 3 fixtures, they both had a disappointing end to last season. You got Forest away. I think it's a really good start for Perisic. Like I said, great goal involvement, great expected goals. No points because he was in Serie A. If he produces anywhere near those figures, he will be a really good asset. Lots of attacking returns. He looks like one, not nailed, but definitely one of Tottenham presence in that side. And maybe Perisic is going to give me that. Completing that side at the back then is Tomiyasu. 4.5 and those Arsenal fixtures. I'm doubling up on Chelsea. I'm doubling up on Arsenal. 4.5, I don't mind. He's not absolutely nailed on my side. Doesn't offer much goal threat, was my only consideration and problem for me. But 4.5, he's really cheap, and I do like his fixtures. For the moment, Tomiyasu, who has been in my drafts all the way through, still keeps his place, but he is under a lot of pressure, I will say. Moving into the midfield area, this is a place that is definitely up for debate, St Maximin, and we'll look at lots of options. Forest at home is a really appealing fixture. Then you got Brighton at Hove Albion away, Wolves away. You got 2 horrible games with Man City and Liverpool, so that does put me off a little bit. But that opening fixture really puts me in. Puts him in my good books really. Shots around per 90, not too bad. Over 2, that's fine for a midfielder, especially. Goal involvement per 90, fine at 0.35 as well. The fact that he's listed as a midfielder makes him perhaps the most appealing thing to me, and he's going to be playing up front. He did play a lot of games for Newcastle, so I'm hoping that his injury record speaks for itself last season, and he gets a clean pre-season ahead of him. He could be a real difference maker in a Newcastle side that is vastly improved, remember, since Eddie Howe took over. They've put money in there, better clientele. You have to say the results reflected that. So even though his XGI is really low at 0.35, well, I say really low, it's not anywhere near the heights of other players. Remember, you're playing for 6.5 is all you're paying for. And his figures would have been distorted by the start they had last year. So I'd actually think his XGI is going to be a little bit better than that. 6.5, I'm not saying he's nailed, but he's definitely one at the moment in that bracket that I'm looking at. Next to come up on the list, then we'll have a Raheem Sterling. 10 million, he's not a cheap purchase by any stretch of the imagination, but those fixtures again for Chelsea look decent. You've got Everton, Leeds, Southampton all the way, and then you've got those Tottenham Leicester games at home. Shots per 90, again, a bit more than St Maximin, 2.46. His goal involvement is really good, 0.88. That's really impressive. 1.63 goal points he got last season. The thing I like about Sterling is his goal involvement, his XGI, is just really consistent over the last 3 or 4 years. Even though he's been playing bit part with Manchester City, he's still up there over the 0.8, 0.7 XGI. Now, you would expect him to get game time at Chelsea. That's why he's left Manchester City. And if he does, there's nothing to suggest that he won't get and keep those figures going. Whether it be up front or out wide, Sterling for me looks like a really good option. And comparing him to other players, he's up there above the likes of Son. Again, he didn't play as often and he was playing an elite side, but I don't think Chelsea are going to be miles behind Manchester City this year. Better than De Bruyne, and you're playing at 2 million less for Son, 3 million less for 2 million less than De Bruyne. 10 million nailed in that Chelsea side. Oh, I really like him. He wasn't a player I looked at. Delving into those stats, I think he's nailed on for me. I definitely want him. The last one I'm going to bring into the midfield, and yes, it will be a 5-3-2, is Mo Salah. Look at those shots per 90. I think I'm going to do a bit of a video just about Salah. Do we keep him, don't we? There is a temptation to move him out the side at such a high price that that's always going to be the case. But those figures just speak for himself. He tops all the tables. He's got the most points. Joint goal scorer. For me, bang, he's nailed. I don't think I can have too much conversation about him right now. He just has to be in your side. Looking up front then, Jesus, we've already looked at those stats for Arsenal. Shots in around per 90 look decent. XGI, very good again, 0.3. At 8 million, nailed on up front for Arsenal. 120 points last year, Man City, that's still pretty decent. I think he's got to be. He's got to be in my side. Ronaldo topped the charts in terms of XGI for forwards last year, 0.8. 0.77 for Kane. Vardy was the next one, 0.57. So, Jesus, if he has a similar season to last season, he would be slipping right into that top 3. He looks like a really good buy. The main man, he's having a good pre-season. I think he's really going to flourish under Arsenal, and I'm prepared to back him, especially when you consider those fixtures as well. Jesus, for me, is another one that just has to be nailed into my side. Lastly, and I'll put this one with a slight proviso, there was talk of Erling Haaland not being fit for the Americas game. He will be back for Bayern Munich, Guardiola has said. So if there's any consideration that he might not be fit for game week 1, it's a really easy transfer across to Kane, and I've got no issues doing that at home to Southampton. I don't want to do that because I definitely want to keep Haaland for that Bournemouth fixture and those home fixtures beyond. And Haaland is another one, I'm just non-negotiable. He plays for me every week. 11.5 million, 3.76. I know these are Bundesliga stats. He's playing though for a really elite side in the Premier League. He's going to get the service. He's going to be the main man. For me, it's just, again, I have to have him in. He's bolted on. He's nailed on Erling Haaland. Looking to the bench, then we have firstly in goal Wayne Hennessy. I just want a £4 million goalkeeper. Mendy is my set and forget. I don't need to bring on anyone else. Hennessy, 4 million. If I can get a goalkeeper that I know is going to play for 4 million, I'd absolutely bring him in. But in the meantime, Wayne Hennessy gets the nod for me. As my striker, 4.5, Delap. Has been rumours, talks about him going on loan, possibly to Southampton or another Premier League club. So if he gets that move, great. It does take up a Man City slot, so that might mean he has to come out. But for 4.5, at the moment, again, he's the budget player and putting all my money into my playing side. If I can get one playing, fantastic. We'll wait and see what other developments happen between now and the end of the transfer window. For the time being, though, Delap gets the nod. In midfield, then, it's a pretty no-brainer for me. It has to be Andres, 4.5 million. He's going to be nailed on, playing for Fulham. He looks like a good option. Again, if he needs to come off the bench and score me some points. And then finally, again, I've had someone else talk to me about this quite a few times. Jack Colback, midfield for Forest. I just would like to know how nailed on he is. But for 4.5, he comes in. And then my total cost of my side on the bench, including the first 11, is 99.5 million. I've definitely gone big at the back. Of my players that I've got now, I've got 6 in there at the moment. But this is when it gets a little bit interesting and spicy from my point of view. When we start tinkering with one or two of the players and the different options in this side. So, for instance, if Perisic comes out... Now, Jamal Spence has recently been bought by Tottenham. Conte's come out and said he's not really... Doesn't know a lot about Spence. He's not been a player that he's requested. The club have gone and sort of purchased him, and he understands the long-term reasoning for all that. But he's not his player. Spence has had a great season on loan at Forest from Middlesbrough, of course. 4.5. If he gets the nod, great. But by all sounds and accounts, it doesn't seem like he is going to get the nod. Who would interest me in that position, though, is definitely Matt Doherty. He feels like a bit of a forgotten man. Same fixtures as Perisic, clearly. He's $500,000 cheaper. Plays on that right-hand side. If all reports suggest that Emerson is going out on loan, trying to be sold by Tottenham, the only other competition he's going to have, Doherty, is this Spence, who Conte has kind of already intimated he's not his player. Doherty's figures last year were brilliant before he got injured. 7 goal involvement. His XGI is phenomenal at 0.53. That knocks everyone else out of the park. The only thing he didn't do was produce it over a long enough period of time. But he's even outperforming the likes of Trent in terms of expected goal involvement. 67 points he's got. For me, for $500,000 cheaper, I know everyone's jumping on the Perisic bandwagon. Doherty looks like a brilliant option. I will need to keep an eye on those friendlies and just anything Conte says to make sure that he is, in fact, that number one choice right back. But for me, he looks like a brilliant option, a cheaper option, a differential. I really like him. He's proved in the Premiership. He's 3 years younger, I think, than Perisic as well. For me, he's got all the trademarks and just looks like a fantastic player. The stats line up. I really like him. For 5 million, I think it's a move I'm almost certainly going to make instead of Perisic. That gives me an extra $1 million to play with. What I've got the choices of, I could start to go up to the likes of Bernardo Silva if he's going to play as much football as he did last year, 0.41. So I can start to look up sort of upgrading him. St. Maximin to a Bernardo. I could go obviously from a Tomiyasu. I could go from a Robertson to a Trent. That's also an option. If I wasn't going to go from St. Maximin, the other choice that I could do is go to Neto. He's a very popular choice. Now, he got, a couple of goals and 2 assists and a goal, I think, in the recent friendly. 3.39 shots per 90, really good. His XGI is fantastic as well. Only got 22 points. We know he's had big injuries. Really popular, 20% owned already by the community. 5.5, it is hard to overlook him. Now, if you bring him instead of St. Maximin, suddenly, and Doherty, we got 98 million. We got 2 million to start knocking around, and that side looks pretty good. Where do I want to start reinvesting that money? I've got options. What I do also want to have a look at, and I think I'm going to do a video on this maybe later on in the week for my own benefit, as well as just investigating this, is if I nail Salah. We all have to think about it sometime. It all crosses our mind, do we want to get rid of Salah? If Salah comes out and I suddenly bring KDB in, now KDB's stats are pretty good. His fixtures are good. He's $1 million cheaper. He's not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. He's 12 million. Second most expensive player in the game alongside Son. But 3.17 shots per 90. XGI is good at 0.7. That's right up there along the likes of Son last year. Points 196, very close to getting that 200. Remember, he had a timeout with injuries as well. If we look at the course of the last 3 seasons, season before last, his XGI was 0.94. Before that, 0.92. Then 0.76. So if we think he had a good season, and I think we all remember if you were on him captaincy-wise when he got those 4 goals, his XGI was lower last year than it was the previous year. And I think that's going to be down to a lot to injuries. He's having a good pre-season. He scored a couple of goals in a 2-1 win recently. He looks pretty sharp. He'd have got a pre-season behind him. Hit the ground running. He is definitely an option. He has the fixtures there for me. He's $1 million less than Salah. I don't think there's any way, unless I start converting the slice of Sterling. I could go Sterling to Salah and have De Bruyne. That is an option. But what else could I do? I could upgrade that Neto. I could go for a Robertson up to a Trent. I've freed quite a bit of cash, and there's lots of things I can do. So there's the likes of Trent getting upgraded from Robertson. If I wanted to do that, Diaz can come into that side now as well. And also that midfield looks really strong. It is missing the likes of Salah, but that's what you can do when you suddenly move Salah down to a De Bruyne or even a Son maybe. Other players you can consider, we've got lots of Saka, we've got the likes of Wilson could come in. Also, we've got Rashford, he looks like an option. Eriksen, all these players bouncing around. I haven't even put the likes of Martial, who potentially could be in there. The likes of Sancho. All sorts of different options are still available to you. But I hope you found this draft useful. Let me know in the comments below, what are you intending? Who are your nailed on players? Who do you think I'm missing out on? We've only got less than 2 weeks to go. Don't forget to hit that like button, guys. Make sure you subscribe. In the meantime, take care. Speak to you soon.